And welcome back. In this video I'm going to be showing the process of putting together the actuator for the Aileron bell crank assembly. This is the piece that's at the root of the wing and where the controls will transition over to the torque tube to actuate the aileron via the bell crank. It's three pieces, two of them are powder coated, and then they're attached by a steel tube that goes between the two. And there's two attach points on the root of the wing. One's at the forward attach point that's connected to the fuel tank, and the other is on the aft attach point. Now, the process is simply putting rod ends into each of the tubes, marking in match drilling with the holes that are in the powder-coated tube to drill the holes out for the rod ends. Once you get those in place, then it's a matter of lining up the tube that connects the two halves together, the forward assembly and the rear assembly. And then ultimately, when you go to put it together, the actuating arms off of this piece are actually offset, probably about 5 or 10 degrees. And it has you build a little wedge to basically create that offset. As far as any kind of gotchas or things to look out for in this portion of the plans for both this piece and the actuator system for the aileron, the bell crank and torque tubes and things like that, there really wasn't any. This is actually a pretty straightforward section. Most of the connections are made with pop rivets, so there's not a lot of riveting that you have to worry about, with the exception of the tube that goes from the bell crank to the aileron itself. That's the one that uses I want to say they're 4-11s. They're long rivets, and you want to be careful with how you set those. But other than that, there wasn't really a whole lot of things that really caught you off guard. So long as you look at the measurements and you check and double check your measurements before you drill anything, both the entire length of this piece, the actuator itself, it's got a specific measurement from end to end, as well as the length or the distance from the end of the tube to the center of the bearing, things like that. So long as you're paying attention to that stuff, this goes by pretty straightforward. It's a pretty simplistic step. Here you see me working on the tube that connects the two halves, the forward and the aft assembly, and it's just a steel tube. It's going to have you mark it up. You're going to measure it and cut it to the length, obviously. Then you're going to mark it up. I believe it's like 1.5 inches, something like that, from the end. Put it into the one assembly, mark it off, and then match drill the holes. And then you kind of use that as your reference when you're setting the angle, and you'll see that here in just a few minutes. But other than that, like I said, there's not a lot of difficult portions or aspects to this section. So long as you pay attention to, like I said, the measurements, then you should be fine. Some of the other things I got going on is, as I've talked to before, I've got a Cherokee. It's a 1965 Piper Cherokee 235. It's a lot of plane. It's more than enough capacity to carry anybody I want, essentially, which is what I was looking for. And it's a fun little plane. It's my first airplane that I've actually owned, and had the experience of losing a cylinder, which some of you have probably seen in the past videos that I've talked to. But got it up going again, so now I'm looking to finally get it back up in the air and get some time on the new cylinder and breaking those new rings. So it's been a lot of fun. I'm planning on probably flying tomorrow somewhere up northern Arizona. There's a lot of snowfall up there, so long as the weather is clear, I think I might go up there and see what I can see. So this is the step I was talking to a little bit earlier, where you put a twist or a difference in angles to the two actuator arms. You want to make sure that one is going to have you measure the total distance, the total length of this piece from end to end. And then also what you see me building is a little wood block. It gives you the measurements, and I'm using my, again, I keep calling it a caliper. One of these days I'll learn the name of the tool that I use to measure the size of of things. But measure it out to the size that the plans call for, and basically it sits, you put a bolt through the actuator arm on the far end there, and it sits on top of the block. Match drill the one hole, cleco it, and then go ahead and finish out the rest as you see me doing here. So it's not terribly difficult to do. You just, again, make sure the measurements are right. The importance of this is where this is how you're going to set your neutral plane on your aileron, and that way also, if I understand correctly, when you go to operate your ailerons with the control rod or with a control stick, you want to make sure that both of the actuators are basically in the same location, neutral, so that you have equal travel on the ailerons when you go left and right. So in other words, if you go left, the left aileron will come up so many degrees, and when you go right, the right aileron will come up roughly that same number of degrees, and that they'll both come back to neutral when you have your control stick in the neutral position. So that's one of the important steps that it talks to quite a bit in the instructions here. So once I get all this in, it's a matter of just through drilling all these holes. Again, they're all match drilled, and then you upsize them, and then you put an AN3 bolt through both ends, both sides of this. And that's what you see me doing here, is getting all the holes upsized to be able to put the bolts in place. And then, being that they're AN3 bolts, you torque them. If I recall correctly, out of the section 5 of the plans, I want to say AN3 was somewhere around 25 to 28 inch-pounds, depending on if you had a self-locking nut or not. Being that these do, make sure you torque everything down. I also have that torque goo that tells you if a nut or I'm sorry, a bolt has broken away from its torqued value. Now, real quick before I let this video run out, in this portion here, this is a gotcha. Make sure you use spacers between the assembly piece here and those bearings that you're attaching to. Otherwise, you'll pull those brackets in and it will bind everything. So that is one thing to look out for, and the instructions talk to it quite a bit. So anyway, I'm going to let this video run out here. I've just got a couple seconds left. And again, thank you for watching these videos. If you get a chance, hit that like button for me. And if you haven't already, go ahead and subscribe and hit the alarm bell, and you'll get notifications anytime I put these out. Thanks for watching.